and they were conversing about all the things that had occurred. And it happened that while they were conversing and debating, Jesus himself drew near and walked with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. He asked them, "What are you discussing as you walk along?" They stopped, looking downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, said to him in reply, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place in these days?" And he replied to them, "What sort of things?" They said to him, "The things that happened to Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word, before God and all the people. How our chief priests and rulers both handed him over to a sentence of death and crucified him. But we were hoping that he would be the one to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it is now the third day since this took place. Some women from our group, however, have astounded us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and they did not find his body. They came back and reported that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who announced that he was alive. Then some of those went with us to the tomb and found things just as the woman had described. But him they did not see. And he said to them, 'Oh, how foolish you are! How slow of heart to believe that what all the prophets spoke.' As they approached the village to which they were going, he gave the impression he was going further. But they urged him, saying, 'Stay with us, for it is nearly evening and the day is almost over.' So he went in to stay with them. And it happened that, while he was with them at table, he took bread, said the blessing, broke it, and gave it to them. With that, their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. But he vanished from their sight. Then they said to each other, 'Were not our hearts burning within us while he spoke to us on the way and opened the scriptures to us?' So they set out at once and returned to Jerusalem, where they found gathered together the 11 and those who were with them, saying, 'The Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon.' Then the two recounted what had taken place on the way and how he had made known to them in the breaking of the bread." This is the gospel of Jesus Christ.
Praise to the Lord Jesus Christ.
Every one of us has been born, right? I mean, every one of us has been formed in our mother's womb, and we have been given birth. And would everybody agree here that at some point in time, our bodies aren't going to work any longer? We call that death, but as Christians, we don't believe that we really die. But let's just say we call it death when we have to leave our bodies. Would you say that everybody here is not going to escape that? Sooner or later, your body's not going to work, and you're not going to be in your physical body. So there's birth, and then there's death. Oftentimes we'll hear, "Oh, it was like a life or death situation," as if the opposite of life is death, or the opposite of death is life. And yet, really, the opposite of death is birth. You're born, and then you die. The opposite of life, well, there is no opposite to life. All there is life. There is no opposite to life. Once you are alive, you will never stop being alive. That's why we say you're already in eternal life. How's that going? So we're born and we die. So we're born into being a human experience. And we're here until we leave our body, which we call death. So birth and death, right? So what's the big question we want to ask ourselves? Okay, so what are we doing here? What are we supposed to do between birth and death? What is the point of life? What is the meaning and the purpose of our life? Now, oftentimes when we're born and we're crying, right? Most of us are born, he was crying. We're born crying, and that crying, that can almost continue on until we die, right? Right? We're sort of like, we're resisting and we're against things that have happened. You know, now we're going to, okay. So now we're going to leave our body at some point in time, right? And everybody's going to leave. Now, I don't know, he doesn't know this just yet, but the minimum retirement age for a deacon at Good Shepherd is 97. So minimally, you're going to be around for another 33 years. But so we don't know when our bodies aren't going to work, but at some point in time, that's going to happen, right? So now, but here we are now. When you think about it, and we all do this, right? Have we ever said, "Why does this happen to me? That's not fair. How come that happened? That should not have happened 10 years ago." Right? So we're kind of like, we're against whatever's happening in our life, and we can be almost against what has happened in our life, right? So I always like that line, what's your relationship with reality? I'm totally against it. What? How can you be against reality? That would be like me holding a ball and saying, if you could hang out for a little while, I'm waiting for this to stay in the air, and I'm getting frustrated because it keeps on falling, and you say, what are you doing? And I say, I'm waiting for this. Well, you're against the law of gravity. You would say, what are you, nuts? You're going to stand there all day long? And well, then, why do we do that emotionally in our lives? Why are we against whatever's happening? Now, we might not like what's happening sometimes in our life, but what is the point of being against it? What is the point of being against or not accepting what has happened in our past history? What is the point of that? Why are we doing that? And we do it all the time. Now, if you say, you know what? If I could complain and tell you about my tale of woe from 10 years ago, enough times, and it will change my personal history, when I say, okay, well, now there's a point to that. If I could worry, oh gosh, you know what? If I could just worry enough, if I could freak out and worry enough, it's going to change the future. Okay then, that makes sense. But guess what? Worrying is a total waste of time. It pretends to be important. It pretends to be necessary. Hey, you know, you really better worry about that. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. It's a total waste of time. Thinking about whatever has happened in the past, guess what? It's not going to change. So it's interesting when they say the hallmark of mental health is living in reality. I've got to live in reality and live in what is. I can't shoehorn truth. And Jesus says, the truth will set you free. So to live powerfully is to live in the truth. To live powerfully is to say yes to whatever has happened in our life. Well, first of all, because it's happened, like it's not like we have a choice. You know, like we kid around like in golf, you know, the guy hits a shot. Oh, I'll take that. Well, we weren't offering you a do-over. What do you mean I'll take that? Thank you so much for taking the shot that you hit. There's no choice in the matter. You know, all right, I'll take whatever has happened in my life so far. Well, thank you so much, because, like, guess what? You have no choice. So to be free of that. Now, when you think of Jesus on a cross, now he's quoting Psalm 22 when he's saying, my God, why have you abandoned me? You wonder how powerful that is, that's on in the scripture, because doesn't that sort of represent us? You ever have something bad happen to you, or something in your somebody you love, something, right? My God, why? Where's God? Why has God abandoned me? Why is God doing this to me? Why? Oh, why? Why have you forsaken me? We can all identify with that. And yet, Jesus evolves on the cross and eventually says, into your hands I commend my spirit. Into your hands I commend my spirit. I say yes. Father, living God, we all want to be able to do that. I say yes. Into your hands I give you my life. I give you my past. I give you my heart. I give you whatever has happened to me. And into your hands, I open up to whatever is going on in my life right now. And I might not like it, but I'm going to say yes to it. Into your hands, I commend my spirit. You know, it was funny. The day I had the surgery, I had it at like noontime. Well, earlier, but I became aware or awake around 1. Started complaining and they gave me Dilaudid. But anyway, so at midnight, they rolled me down the hallway, and I got this guy in front of me that's throwing up. Now, I wasn't a big mask wearer, I have to admit that. I did wear my mask, but I didn't. But in that moment, I wanted several. Because it was not a pleasant experience. Then behind me was this guy that had been in a fight and was beaten up. His whole face was like a watermelon. And he was angry, and he was yelling and saying all these things. I'm going, I'm not sitting this way with him behind. I'm going to turn my wheelchair this way just to keep an eye on this guy. Right? Now, I'm bleeding from my mouth. I'm running out of gauze. And it was so ridiculous, I started cracking up laughing. Right? It's almost like, I might as well say yes. This is my ridiculous reality. I'm in Newark, New Jersey at midnight with total lunacy all around me. I'm bleeding. What am I going to say? No? And when I entered into the reality of it, it actually became funny. You know, it was like so ridiculous to say yes to our lives. And here we are, birth and death, and we're trying to understand, isn't it beautiful that you're all here? By the way, isn't it amazing? Now, many of us, we didn't know each other, right, prior to Good Shepherd, and yet somehow or another, something happened inside of your mind and your heart that drew you to here right now. Right? You guys didn't know they were coming today. Right? But something drew us here. The Spirit of the living God and the risen Christ draws us here. And there's something that we're looking for and hungering for in the experience of being alive between this birth and death, the human experience. Now, when you look at these Israelites, they escape Egypt, and they go to this Sinai Peninsula. And when they're there, they experience manna. Manna was some type of a gooey, bread-like substance that appeared. It was like a frost of some sort that appeared on the Sinai Peninsula, and it was food, and they ate it, and they needed to eat it. And so God creates this experience of bread, manna, to sustain and give these Israelites food to sustain them on their journey. So it's a spiritual journey, and yet it was also a historical journey as they moved to Mount Sinai. And then when they get to Mount Sinai, they receive these 10 commandments. And they build this Ark of the Covenant. They become a covenant people. I will be your God and you will be my people. They became a covenant people. And in the Ark of the Covenant was the 10 Commandments. And in the Ark of the Covenant, what was called the bread of presence. They had bread. Bread of presence in the Ark of the Covenant. And then we listen to the story of Jesus where he has the multiplication of the loaves. Right? Now again, bread for those people, that was what they ate. That was what sustained them and gave them life. And in that story of the multiplication of the loaves, there is more than enough left over. So there was an abundance of bread that God's presence gives us. He doesn't just give us enough strength. He doesn't give us enough insight and wisdom. He gives us an abundance of it. More than we could possibly even need. He gives us this bread. And then here's this Jesus. Imagine you're going to be crucified tomorrow. And Jesus says, I'd like to have a meal with you. Are you kidding me? I'd be freaking out. And Jesus gathers with us and says, I want to have a meal with all of you. And he takes bread and he blesses the bread and he breaks the bread and he gives it to the people like ourselves and says, take this and eat it. This is my body to sustain you, to strengthen you, to heal you. This divine presence in Eucharist. And he says, with the cup, this is the new and everlasting covenant. And I'm going to offer it all to all of you so that you never have a doubt of my presence and strength in your life. And he gives us Eucharist, which we're about to receive shortly. Bread was always used by God to convey and communicate his presence in our lives and their lives throughout history. Bread. Always trying to communicate this. Now, when you think of, I like this line, be friendly to life, and life will be friendly to you. Almost as if there is life is conscious, life is aware of us, life, the presence of God, is always conscious and aware. And when we're friendly to life, which means saying yes to our life, that it's almost like has this impact where life becomes responds to that. There was a parishioner earlier the night. She was robbed at Panera Bread. They took her credit cards. She had $100 in her wallet, and she was really bothered that the guy, clipped her from the thing. And she says, normally, I get so upset over something like that, but there's something happened to me where I wasn't upset. Of course, I got to call my credit cards and my license and everything like that. And she says, The next week I won $100 in some lottery. And then I won another $100. You know? So it'd be nice if that were a perfect formula. But I mean, like, I think that there's a lot to be said for saying yes to life, as opposed to being against it. Like that road to Emmaus. We're all on this road to Emmaus. But if we're so bogged down with our problems and complaining and being upset that we're not even aware of this presence that's available to us, that's conscious of us. When the disciples are saying, now that I think about it, in the midst of my heartache, my heart was on fire talking to this guy. I was alive. My heart felt wonderful. As I was with this talking on the road to Emmaus, I went from this sadness and being bogged down to be changed, because I came up and out of and said yes. I became aware of this presence. See, God is always present. God is always consciously aware of you. God is always consciously loving you, aware of you, giving you strength, giving you an insight, giving you an ability to solve problems. God is always consciously aware of us. That's not even the question. The question is, are we conscious of God?